Welcome, everybody, to the Ever-Evolving Truth. Good Friday. My name is Jeff. I'm here with Mounts, Leah, Sterner 1, Sterner 2, Abby and Greg, and Court. How is everybody today?
Good, thanks.
Fine.
We have a very special birthday. Leah has turned 40, the big 4-0. Leah, welcome to the 40s.
Welcome. You're still in your 30s, so you can't welcome anyone anywhere. So
I just wanted somebody else to say it.
Welcome from far above
welcome
you.
me.
Yes, welcome to the 40 Club.
Thank you, Mounts. Thank you.
And you said it doesn't feel any different at all, right?
It doesn't. I kind of expected to feel like, I don't know, 40. But 40 feels just like 39.
Yep. So terrible.
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much sucks.
Well, you don't look a day over 38.
Well,
so
thank you so much.
You're doing well. We have a lot to go over here. First, we want to start off by with a correction or retraction, whatever you want to call it. Previously, we were talking about Kyle Rittenhouse. We talk about Kyle Rittenhouse a lot on this show, especially recently. Obviously, the trial's going on right now, and it was brought to our attention by someone that listens to us that we kept mentioning that his mom dropped him off at the protest, drove him across state lines with an illegal gun. That actually didn't happen. I think we were all fooled by a social media trend that was going around, and I never actually heard anything debunking it, which usually I will see the fact checks that pop up. I subscribe to them, so usually those fact checks will pop up and correct that kind of stuff. But I didn't see one for this one, so
well, what got
shame
me,
on
Jeff,
me.
What got me, Jeff, about it was that I looked and there's articles from 2020. There's all sorts of this was a very accessible piece of news that we could have had access to, but I made the mistake that I sometimes lecture others for, and I heard the story. I had been hearing this over and over again about the mother, and I took it at face value and believed it, and foolishly did not double check it. The same reason you guys are feeling bad. And I just wanted to say, usually if I don't know all the details of a story, I will say that, and I will say things like, if this happens to be true, then this. If this is what happened, then this. I didn't do that here. I want to make a commitment here that I think our whole team is bound and determined not to make that mistake again. So we do apologize. We are retracting it now because we do care about telling the truth on this show, and there you have it.
And, we're human. We make mistakes. So it wasn't intentional. I don't think it really changes our thoughts on Kyle Rittenhouse at all. Maybe a little bit. Maybe we'll discuss it a little bit later. We have it on the outline for the show. If it changes our thoughts on the mother at all, but from everything I read, is essentially she didn't know where her son was. So, if you think if you think she should be held accountable in that sense, maybe it doesn't change your thoughts on who she is as a mother and a person. So, again, honest mistake. We'll try to do better. But we have a lot of news to go over here. First and foremost, stories that we talked about, and we want to keep you up to date. I don't know if you guys saw this, but there is a $750 million lawsuit filed against Travis Scott.
I did see that.
Obviously, I think it's warranted. I think everybody else does too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. This sounds like a big, what do they call it? Those
class action lawsuits.
Class action lawsuits, because it's that big. I can't imagine one person suing for $750 million, but
I think it's probably class action for the and don't quote me on this because I'm not positive, but from what I saw on social media, this is a class action suit for anyone that was at the show, but there will probably be separate suits for the actual victims, the families of the people who lost children there. Those will be separate.
Oh, I'm sure
the
they
average
will.
concert goer could get in on this class action.
Right, like 12 years from now, you'll get like $75.
Exactly.
Have you guys ever been part of a class action lawsuit?
No.
I have not.
I was one from when I was 18 years old. Walmart was like stiffing us on our pay. Surprise, surprise. And I ended up getting like $700 out of nowhere just in the mail one day. I'm like, oh,
sweet. You're actually in Sundance Vacations was
yeah. That's another one. Yeah, same thing. They were stiffing us. They were not paying us legally.
Yeah.
And yeah, that one was like $700 too.
Yeah, that was actually, we got quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
Because we worked for free.
We did. We worked for free. And they were like, no, you can't do that. You can't let people work for free. So the self-proclaimed Q Shaman was sentenced to 41 months in prison today. I know we shared some thoughts on this earlier in the group chat. Anybody want to say them out loud?
Or at least get closer to the mark. Leah and I both didn't think anybody involved in this shit should have gotten less than 10 years, I think is what we had said weeks ago. And Abby pointed out he probably pleaded down to the 41
Not probably. He did plead down.
He definitely pleaded down to the 41 months. I think everybody involved in that should have gotten double this because of a literal storming of our nation's capital is something that you have to make an example out of people on. But I'm happy to see that he'll spend some time rotting, and I wonder if his horns will be as sharp after taking it up the ass a few times.
Not just stormed the Capitol for the purpose of overthrowing the government
and
changing
a fairly
hanging the vice president and trying to overturn a duly elected president.
Yeah, this is barely a slap on the wrist, and I said earlier, I will be shocked if he doesn't have 18 months. This is ridiculous. This is pointless, I feel, and I don't think there's any accountability here. I'm disgusted with the justice system.
Isn't this the same guy, too, that's been requesting, like, special meals while he's been awaiting trial and stuff like that?
Right. This buffalo's got a sensitive tummy.
Yep. Let's see here. What else do we have? Oh, big one here. FBI raid of Lauren Boebert? Have we ever decided how... Boebert. Boebert's campaign manager's house, right? Abby, you have more on this. Do you have the actual quote?
I had I had sent it in the group chat.
Let me get it here.
The tweet says...
I have it right here. Breaking. The FBI has raided the home of Lauren Boebert, former campaign manager, to investigate whether the associate took part in an election security breach involving voting machines. How does that make you feel? Well, it makes me feel like I have been, like this whole stop the steal bullshit has been a fraud from day one, because the only people trying to steal elections in this country are fucking Republicans. And here's just another example.
This woman is slowly ranking her or rising in the ranks of people that I'm the most disgusted by. Just an absolute hideous clown of a woman, an insult to all women out there, in my opinion. And it doesn't surprise me at all that the very thing they're out there accusing the Democrats of doing, a completely fabricated, pre-planned story, by the way. This was the plan if he lost. Remember that. This has no basis in fact whatsoever to have claimed the election was stolen. This was plan B if it wasn't looking good for him to actually win legitimately. And I think anyone with half a brain who's looking at it closely could tell that. So anyone assisting in this, anyone trying to destroy the fabric of truth in this country and what truth is supposed to mean, I feel like there's people out there who are just energetic about lying, energetic about telling what they know to be a false tale, just so they can somehow make the other side look worse, because in the end they think they're on the right side, so all things are justified. The means will justify the ends every time, as long as the right side wins, which means truth no longer matters. This bitch is up to it. Marjorie Taylor Greene is up to it. That whole fucking crew on the right that's doing this shit, that whole Bannon crew, Trump, all of them. This is what they're doing right now. And it's happening everywhere too often, and social media is like fucking, it's turning, it's like turning an already existing problem into a problem on crack, on speed. And it's accelerating and accelerating, and people don't know what to believe anymore. Here we are doing a show called The Ever-Evolving Truth, and we even ran with one of the big lies by accident because we didn't look close enough for the truth. So what's the average everyday person who doesn't have time to look into every single story supposed to do when you got clowns like this out there trying to hoodwink the public, trying to tell lies with absolutely no regard for the truth, no regard for honesty, no regard for integrity, or that the minds of the American public actually matter. It fucking disgusts me, and I hope they find something, and I hope this I hope something terrible happens to her and everyone of her ilk.
I think you gave them too much credit. I think they actually believe the shit that they're saying. I don't think they're smart enough to make it up. I believe that Marjorie Taylor Greene and this Boebert bitch, I believe that they are told what to say and they say it and they believe it. And I think that's even more dangerous. I don't think they're smart enough to lie. I don't.
I also want to point out that, the Republican governor that just won Virginia, you don't see Democrats screaming to, audit the election, recount that someone stole it, even though I think it was someone in his family got caught trying to vote like 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's not enough to change the outcome of the election, so we're not pissing in our pants with anger because of this guy. But the only people trying to cheat are the ones accusing us of trying to cheat. It's absolutely fucking absurd. Any more thoughts on Boebert? No. All right, I'm going to run through the trending news. Just the headlines here. If anybody has a comment, after record low, monarch butterflies return to California. So apparently monarch butterflies are a great sign of how the ecosystem is doing, and after a record low last year, they have started to return to California. Good sign or just a fluke?
Is it because of a decrease in the amount of wildfires? Does it have anything to do with it? Do we know?
I don't know. Didn't they just have a huge one?
All I've been hearing is how horrible that problem and how out of control it's been getting. So if it's environmentally related, why they're coming back, I didn't know if it was related to that or for a completely different reason.
I'm going to take a guess, and it's because, the pandemic kept us all inside for a while, and the nature kind of recovered a little bit. But I think it's going to be short-lived, honestly. But who knows? Maybe it's a sign of things to come. Michelle Wu sworn in as Boston's first woman elected mayor, breaking glass ceilings.
Yeah, that's great.
That's a good thing.
I'm surprised it took this long.
In Boston?
Yeah,
that surprises me. And even though I know it's a conservative city, it's still a big city, and it is surprising that it's the first female. But
it's conservative for a city, but I wouldn't call it conservative.
That's what I mean.
You know what I mean?
Conservative for a city. Yeah, but still,
do we know how many women have run in the past?
I don't know,
because it might not even be that many. That could be why.
Right. Something I'm sure we all aren't surprised by, or maybe we are. I don't know. Alex Jones is going to be held liable for the defamation in Sandy Hook hoax case.
That was almost my article, but I figured you were going to put it in trending news. Yay! And
yay.
I mean, Sterner, how do you feel about that? Because your freedom of speech thing is so important.
Well,
I wonder how you feel about, does he have the right to say what he said or no?
I think that when Sandy Hook happened, that there were a lot of questions in the air. There were a lot of questions worth talking about. There were actions happening on the left where they were clearly using this as the latest crisis to try to push, the restriction on guns, and then there were a lot of people coming out, and it became about that. There was also some confusion about the kids' association with the school. There were a lot of questions when it first happened. Over time, it became more and more apparent that these questions, and so much of what was fueling the questions, was made up nonsense and bullshit. And Jones pushed it way, way, way too far, to the point where he directly caused the families of Sandy Hook victims to be harassed. So I think he had it coming. I think he deserved what happened. I don't think he should be thrown in jail, which I know this isn't a criminal matter. It's a civil matter. I don't think he should have a legal crackdown as far as his rights go, as far as his freedom and is what I mean. But yeah, I think it's going to be a big dent in his wallet. And this one, you have to say, with all the damage that guy has done, in spite of the truth that he's uncovered, in spite of getting people to look deeper and not accept what they're told on the surface, for all the good you can say that he may have done over the years, this was really, really bad. It's the black eye on his whole career, and his career is full of black eyes, but this is the biggest, blackest eye on his career, and I think he had it coming. So the question now will be, how big is the price tag that he will pay for this major, major miscalculation, which I think even he deeply regrets at this point.
Democrat Beto O'Rourke running for Texas governor in 2022. What do you think? Does he have a shot?
No.
I'd like to say yes, but I'm going to say no. I don't think so.
The only way that I could see that he would have a shot is if what we're hearing out of Texas, what we're seeing in Texas right now, you would think, well, my God, like Abbott, there's no chance Abbott's going to be pushed off the mountain at this point. Look how much he's allowing to happen. Look how much of the agenda he's able to be pushing here in Texas, trying to make it like it is its own country, trying to rewrite the rules of America, starting in Texas, redefining what the country is. It will depend on how much of a counterforce there is in Texas who does not want things to be that way, who is against what Abbott has done and what Abbott's been pushing for. And if those people have a big enough voice, then absolutely it's possible. My only question is I don't know how big their voice will be or how powerful their influence can be at this point. That's the big question hanging in the air that will remain to be seen.
This is a guy who came historically close to beating out Ted Cruz for Congress. Fell just short. And this is also this is a statewide race. This is not affected by districts and gerrymandering. And this is a guy who now has some name recognition, coming off of a time in Texas where Abbott let, whether it was his fault or not, but he oversaw an electric grid that failed twice and killed a lot of Texans because Texas is the only privatized grid in the entire country. And it failed miserably and ended up killing people. Like, that is not okay. He was part of that change. So maybe there's some people angry enough to want to change.
I'm with Mounts. I don't think there is a shot in hell. And because we have watched Texas over and over and over vote against their own interests, why would they change now? And with all yes, you're right, it doesn't really fall under gerrymandering, but they're still going to fuck with the election. That's what they're doing. They're changing laws, and they're just going to change a law to ensure that Beto loses. I mean, that's my prediction.
Well, you just broke my positive spirit for the day, and it only took 11 minutes into the show. Here's a happy thought or happy headline. Sesame Street debuts G. Young, the first Asian American Muppet. Why did this take so long?
That's a great question. I don't know. I don't know.
I don't think we needed an Asian Muppet. I mean,
really?
like they're not. I don't know if that's a priority of. They're Muppets. Like, what race is Big Bird? You know what I mean?
Well,
like,
not Big Bird, but like Bert and Ernie are white. Isn't they're like
they're yellow?
There's a Hispanic one. Well,
they just right. But I'm happy that there's an Asian Muppet. I'm not offended by it, but
I think it's not out of a need. I think it's just allowing kids to be able to see themselves in the characters that they see on television.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there. I think that it is nice to feel represented in something that you're so tied to and that you're so attracted to and enamored by as a kid. It's good if you can see yourself on there. I think people get a little crazy with this shit as far as like demands for inclusion of all different, shapes, sizes, creeds, colors, etc. But I think it's not how can you look at it and say it's a bad thing? And Sesame Street is such a positive medium. It is such a positive platform and has helped millions and millions of children for decades and decades learn simple things that they may not have been being taught properly in other places. So yeah, I'm glad that we now have ourselves an Asian Muppet, and I say the round table that they have lunch on Sesame Street every day is big enough to fit everyone at that table. Yeah. Everybody deserves a seat at that table.
How's this for irony? Man who went to space with William Shatner dies in a plane crash.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not funny, but
it's not funny, but it's the definition of irony, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really that's just it. It's not laughable, but the irony of it is almost laughable. It's almost like a person who like fought in 6 wars slips on a patch of ice and dies, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's one of those things that makes you go like, huh.
We have no control. Yeah, we have zero control. No control in life, so live it the best you can. Here's a very sad story. Beloved Dolphin Tale star Winter dies at Florida Aquarium. If you've never seen the movie, this is a dolphin that lost its tail, was certainly going to die because they need their tails to swim, and go up for air. And a veterinarian, I believe, I don't know the name, it's been a while since I've seen the movie or read about the story, but made this prosthetic tail that allowed the dolphin to live for, I mean, we're talking like 10 years now, if not more. But I guess finally succumbed to the unfortunate disability.
Well, that's really fucking depressing. Jesus Christ, how much more bad shit do you have, Jeff?
Well, it's the news. There's a lot of bad, more so than good. Democrats call for censure of GOP congressman over violent video. I remember we talked about this guy. What was his name? Gosar?
Yeah, Gosar.
Yeah, who tweeted out the video, the animation of him killing AOC. Democrats voted to censure him in the House. Of course, not a single Republican voted.
Now, if he's censured, though, does that just mean that he is not able to take part in certain fucking committees and shit like that? Like, he's not out.
Yeah, it's not. It
right,
doesn't really,
right.
Yeah, it's stupid. it's like
It's
the
like
only thing you can do to punish.
Congress, right?
Yeah. That's what it is. It's a good way to. You're not out. You can't do everything that you want to do, and you can still talk to the media and say whatever you want to.
Not enough. And from what that guy's sisters were saying, that's a guy you ought to watch out for. It seems like he's off his fucking rocker.
Absolutely. And then Prince Harry says he warned Twitter CEO of U.S. Capitol riot. I'd like to look more into that. Like, this guy called it.
What? Really?
Yeah, I what? I don't.
Right.
Where
Like,
did
how did he
you
know?
find this? Where did you see it? What did
He all of a
Where
sudden
did
a
I?
psychic? Did somebody?
Yeah.
This is on the Associated Press. Yeah, how did he see it?
His mother visited him in a dream and told him.
Yeah,
What I'm
that's
guessing.
so weird. Like,
Does it say at all, like, was he just saying, hey, I'm looking at this country right now and how bad things are, and I feel like we're going to see a major uprising, probably. So was it something like that, or was he saying he had some kind of inside knowledge of anything?
Well, this is really just, let's see here. Prince Harry has sharply attacked the failure of social media companies to challenge hate online, revealing that he warned the chief executive of Twitter ahead of the January 6th Capitol riots that the site was being used to stage political unrest. So that's just a little blurb. We'll have to look more into that story and see if there's anything behind it, because that would be interesting.
I don't
it
think
sounds
Harry,
like what Greg said.
Yeah, I don't think Harry knows what's going on to that level.
All right, that is the trending headlines for right now. Let's dive into some deeper things. Leah, you're up first. New Hampshire Moms for Liberty put $500 on teachers' heads.
Yes. So, in case everyone doesn't know, critical race theory is something that's being tossed around a lot, especially by the right. And just to, bring it in, people are running for school boards in, my local area, saying to take critical race theory out of schools. And one thing that I don't think anyone really understands is it is not taught in the elementary or high school level. You can research it, you can check. That is not taught. Anything that is taught about race or anything like that in the elementary or high school level is basic American history. Okay, so there was, in New Hampshire, a law was passed, and New Hampshire is not the only one, but New Hampshire became one of the several states this year to explicitly ban concepts that have been labeled as critical race theory or CRT. The new regulations require teachers found to be teaching divisive concepts, so that's how it's worded, to appear before a state's Board of Education for a disciplinary hearing, which could include losing their license to teach at public schools. So basically what is happening in New Hampshire is that they're saying you can't teach anything about race. If a teacher even meant, and before I go any further about this is what bothers me is, how do you teach children during Black History Month about something as simple as Martin Luther King and not use the word race? How are you supposed to educate children about American history without having race in it at all? Does anyone think that that's possible?
It's not.
No.
So I don't understand how these teachers are supposed to avoid that. The only thing I can assume is that they're going to have to pull anything like that from the curriculum. But, so last week, the State Department of Education launched a new website for parents and students to lodge complaints against educators they believe are violating the new law. The list of violations includes teaching that members of one group are, quote, inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously. So there is also a group called Moms for Liberty, which has gone nationwide now, and there's about 56,000 members. The New Hampshire chapter went on Twitter and said that they would pay $500 to the first person who reports a teacher and gets them fired. So basically what is happening now is they are putting bounties on teachers' heads. So not only do they have to be worried about what's happening in the school, or they can't say something, or if kids are wearing masks, they're risking their lives going to school. Now they have to worry about breaking a law and losing their license. This is ridiculous. This is insane. And this is a step below book burning, in my opinion. That's where it's going next if this continues.
You know, to work so hard to ban something that doesn't even exist. Critical race theory is not part of the public education curriculum. And most of the people raging against critical race theory have no fucking clue what it even means. It's very complicated, and I wouldn't even pretend to try and explain what it means because we don't have the time to go into it. It should be its own episode. But if you're curious, you should go and research what critical race theory actually is. And do not listen to the politicians trying to ban it because they don't know. It's a buzzword. It's a buzzword that gets people scared and fired up and mobilizes them. That's what it is. That's what it is to the right. What it actually is a long, complicated history of racism in this country going back like 300 years, and talking about the systemic,
institutionalized
reasons why people of color can't get ahead in this country,
and how the American government kept them down.
Right.
Yeah,
yes,
it is.
Exactly. It's worth studying. You're talking about redlining. We're talking about sending white and black people off to fight in World War II, promising them a down payment on a house when they come back to build generational wealth, and the white people got it and the black people didn't. Like, this is critical race theory. It's complicated. There's a lot. And frankly, you can't teach it in a school year. So where is it being taught? It's being taught on college campuses and stuff. People that are choosing the class.
Right. That are paying to take that class. And what's interesting about these moms is they claim to be, they have nothing to do with any political pact. And though Moms for Liberty co-founder Tina Dekovich, I'm probably murdering that, but I don't care, has said in interviews that the group is mostly funded by small donors. The group has received thousands from conservative Florida PACs and hosted a fundraiser in June with former cable news host Megyn Kelly that raised $57,000. So, yes, it is backed by the Republican Party.
Well, those women, the Mothers for Liberty, sound like a carload, a van load, bus load of hideous bitches. But here's what I want to say.
That sounds like a docu-cast.
Yeah, possibly, yes. Now, what I want to say about this is, do you remember last week when we did our Jordan Peterson episode? Actually, last week, for those of you listening to this right now, it would have been 3 days ago that you would have heard this show. However, let me ask you, Leah. Do you think that we would have been teaching Jordan Peterson properly to our audience had you been the only one on?
Absolutely not.
That's part one. Part two, if I had been the only one on, would we have been teaching Jordan Peterson properly? Or was it in the interchange between the two diametrically opposed points of view about one subject that allowed you to get deep enough into the subject that you could possibly understand it? Okay, Absolutely. That is how we... Thank you. And so this is how we have to look at things like critical race theory without commenting on the validity of critical race theory at all right now, because that's not the point of this. The point is it's a thing. It exists, and it's how some people believe the world to be, okay, or at least this country to be. And that means that, look, basic American history you mentioned earlier in this article, basic American history doesn't end. It's a living, evolving thing, okay? History doesn't begin or end. It just is, okay? It's everything we've ever done, and eventually everything we ever will do will be part of the history. So when this shit comes up, this is why that concept of add, don't subtract. I'm not plugging this so I can get, put one of my catchphrases out there even more. It's because it's a concept I believe in 100%. Add, don't subtract, okay? If you're going to talk about critical race theory, which you should, it should be talked about in schools, but it should be talked about with both points of view, critical of it and pro for it, so it can be understood by those receiving it. And then they can make up their own determination about whether they think critical race theory is a thing. What we don't need is a busload full of bimbo bitches trying to get people fired so they can win. So they can win. Because that's what it's about. We become children on the fucking playground, and it's all about winning at any means necessary. It doesn't even matter what we say or do anymore, because the truth no longer matters in this country. So it's just about winning, and that's what these bitches want. They want to win. So I say, fuck them all.
Well, I really am concerned deeply about the fact that they cannot talk about race in any way, shape, or form, because it really is, I think, they want to pull it. 53% of Republicans believe that we should not talk about slavery in schools. That's a problem.
It's a big problem.
That's 53% too much.
That's way too much. If the Germans were to say, we're not going to talk about the Holocaust anymore, do you think that would fly? No.
Well, the Germans have regulations and laws about what you're allowed to say about the Holocaust, because that's still a sensitive enough subject there. But while slavery should be a sensitive subject for America, if we don't teach it and we don't remember that that was us at one point, then
we're doomed to repeat it.
Well, exactly. That's the reason that's a phrase, because it's true. If you don't learn from the past, you'll repeat the past because you'll be too stupid to even realize that you're doing it while you're doing it.
Agreed.
We have to take a break there, and just want to point out, Greg, you are not getting your own shirt. You're getting your own T-shirt yet.
I was really going to text Wax and say we need a T-shirt that says "Add, don't subtract."
Oh, I'll make it myself.
You can't even use the internet.
Red crayon. You could do it in red crayon.
All right, let's take a quick break. We'll come back and we will talk some more news. Support for the Ever-Evolving Truth is brought to you by Manscaped. Who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming? Champions of the world? Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped just launched their 4th-generation trimmer, the Lawnmower 4.0. You heard that right, the 4.0. Join over 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped. With this exclusive offer for you, 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code TEAT20. That's TEET20 at manscaped.com. Imagine shaving with a sleek, well-designed, and optimized trimmer that makes shaving time your favorite time in the bathroom. I'm one of the first people to try the new 4.0, and I'm blown away by the performance. The craftsmanship and the details on the 4.0 are next level. Guys, I used to just trim my balls with a $20 trimmer from CVS. And I'm not going to lie, the nicks and cuts made it so that I really wouldn't want to do it that often.
Jeff, I can sympathize with you because at one point as a younger man, I didn't even go with the cheap shaver from CVS. I actually took literal manicure scissors and turned my pubic patch into a crotch cactus. I literally could not. It felt like my dick was dingling against a pincushion all day long, and it became very, very uncomfortable to the point where I never ever shaved down there again. And you might have thought that would have meant that eventually when some lucky lady got in there and got to the goods, that it might have looked like I was halfway to giving birth to some kind of a furry creature. But I am not that kind of guy. I'm kind of a hairless cat in that way. I'm very, very, I'm very mangy. I'm very sparse as far as my hair goes. So it's not that big of a problem. But real quick, before you continue, I got to tell you this. Abby's going to be excited. I had these terrible, I'd call them ugly little man boob pubes. They were little straggly hairs that came out of my my chestal breastal region, and I took this lawnmower 4.0. I took this puppy and I took it to the man boob pubes, and my God, I look like from the waist up, with maybe a couple of less abs, I look like Michelangelo's David. I am sleek, I am light, and I am now ready for prime time in the bedroom.
Well, ladies, let me ask you this. I mean, you prefer a man who's manscaped, right?
Oh, sure, for sure.
And you know what? It's proven that as a man, if you do some manscaping, you will get laid 100% more times in your life than if you don't. Did you know that?
Absolutely, a lot.
Well, I just made it up. That's not actually true. But I will tell you this: it makes you feel 100% more confident when you do a little trimming down there. And Manscaped has engineered the ultimate groin and body trimmer by focusing on intelligent functionality and incredibly comfortable grooming experience. Their fourth-generation trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents. Thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology, I now feel confident shaving my boys. This upgraded trimmer includes a multi-function on-off switch that can engage a travel lock. It also gives you the ability to turn on a 4000K LED spotlight on and off when you needed it for more precise shave. I tell you what I did. I wanted to see how well this worked. I shaved him in the dark. Not a single cut.
Stop! You're such a liar.
Jeff, how did you look in that light?
I looked great, but I just wanted to test out the 4000K LED spotlight just to say that I did it. The Lawnmower 4.0 even allows you to customize your trim through additional guard lengths with sizes 1 through 4. Did I mention wireless charging? The new wireless charging system uses electromagnetic induction, which can help battery length last longer. I know that we all just despise the length of batteries out there, so the fact that we have a longer lasting battery here is amazing. Great feature. Men, if you've been shaving with the same nut trimmer on your face, you've been doing it wrong.
That's for sure.
No person wants to end up with pubes in their mouth. That's an absolute factuality. It's time to get your own ball hair and body trimmer with Manscaped to make me time the best time and enhance your confidence with some nice smooth boys.
Ow.
Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code TEAT20 at manscaped.com. Again, 20% off with the code TEAT20 at manscaped.com. Your balls will thank you.
I can tell you, Jeff, as a hairy gentleman, I need all of that battery life. From the waist down, clean as a baby's bottom. I felt like a surgeon with that thing.
I don't even know if I know what electromagnetic induction means, but it sounds pretty fucking cool, wouldn't you say, Mounts?
You can feel the difference with that electromagnetic.
Do you think women can use it? Like, is it equally usable for vajayjays as your balls?
Absolutely. I would say, as a smaller gentleman, it's almost like I'm shaving a vagina.
but ladies, get your own. We don't need to share with our hairy men.
Yes.
That's for damn sure.
Definitely
Again,
get your own.
Go to manscaped.com, use the code TEAT20 to get 20% off and free worldwide shipping. Welcome back to the Ever-Evolving Truth. It's Friday. We are going through the news. It's been somewhat depressing. But there's nothing that Leah would rather be doing on her 40th birthday than talking politics and news.
Of course not.
So I don't feel guilty about it. So real quick, we want to hit on this article here. Drug overdoses surged amid COVID lockdowns. More deaths in 1 year than ever before. This is not surprising. We've talked about this. It's a lot of it's a result of declining mental illness, being locked away from your friends and family, and resorting to self-medicating and numbing, and it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. And I think what it does is it proves, as a country, we did not handle this so well. Because I think there should have been. It's not that we couldn't. It's not that we didn't need to lock down. I think that there should have been more emphasis put on checking on people and making sure that they're okay. You know what I mean?
Well, I think more than just that too. I mean, we've seen a lot of like increase in outsourcing fentanyl from other countries. I know that there was like a large bust on fake pills with fentanyl. It's somewhere within that article. I briefly read over it. There was a bust of like a larger shipment from Mexico or something like that in regards to fentanyl.
They were trying to, I think, bring in all of the factors of why they surged, and part of the drug overdose surging and the deaths was directly related to COVID, in the sense that there were people that could not get treated fast enough because there weren't enough doctors or nurses or beds or any of that in hospitals because of COVID. So there are definitely circumstances that are out of everyone's control as to why this is happening, and it all seemed to have happened in 1 year. And it's horrible, and it does. I think, again, mental health. I mean, it all goes back to that. We have to fix it. We have to do something about it, and it would help fix a lot of America's problems.
It would. Yeah, it would help just to take it seriously. Everybody to take it seriously, including me.
I think that's how
insurance companies.
Well, that is a whole other issue. And Jeff, I'm in a bad mood this week about a lot of what I'm hearing out there, and your rants about universal health care keep bouncing around in my head. It is something that America needs to survive. Okay, we're not going to get any further and claim back this country in any way, because that's a big part of the corporate influence, the mad profiteering that has just been entangled around healthcare and mental health and all sorts of other aspects of public health, and it's disgusting. And we do. All you can do with mental health is take it seriously. You can't fix it, okay? Because people are going to be what they are, and some people got real problems that they're always going to have to struggle with. But what you can do is you can understand it to the best of your ability, and you cannot make that person who's at the end of their rope to begin with jump through a bunch of flaming hoops to get care.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to Courtney. You have an article about a poor little kid being left on the side of the road because they weren't wearing a mask?
Yes. So this is an article that's coming from out of Livingston, Montana. An 8-year-old boy was kicked off his bus and left on the side of the road because he forgot his face mask at home, which I still don't understand. Like, if he forgot his face mask, how the bus driver would have just even let him on the bus to begin with.
Why doesn't the bus driver have face masks to give to the kid on the bus like every other bus in the world, right?
That was my question.
Yeah.
The bus driver never asked if he even had an extra mask, nor did the bus driver offer the child one or ask if he could just pull his shirt up, use his coat, a glove, a hat, or anything to at least try and cover his face till he got to school, where I'm assuming there would be obviously other masks that he could use so he'd be protected at school. No, the bus driver ordered him off of the bus, left him on the side of the road, and the older brother realized by the time between the kid got off the bus to when they got to another stop that his little brother was missing, and so he asked the bus driver to let him off, and he walked back to the last stop that this kid was dropped off at and couldn't find him. So immediately his heart, like, he started having a panic attack thinking that his brother was probably like kidnapped or something. Started walking back towards home, thankfully found his brother, except his brother was sobbing uncontrollably. And this is, surprisingly, this is not the only article I have read where a situation like this has happened, where a bus driver, not just over masks, I mean, there's been other instances, but this is not the first time this has happened, where a child's life is put in danger because of the bus driver kicking them off of the bus.
No, I didn't get a chance to look at this article today, Court. Is there anything in there about action being taken? I can't imagine how this isn't illegal in some way. The bus driver is the custodian of those children for the time they're on the bus, so there has to be some kind of a negligence, a reckless endangerment, something that they can throw at this lunatic. Does it list anything in there about that?
They did contact the school superintendent, and they seemed apologetic, and they were appalled by the situation, and that they would be contacting, I guess, like the company that the bus driver worked for, and the actions were going to be taken. She said she didn't hear anything for 2 days, so I made a phone call wanting to know what was going on. I was told that there was a different bus driver on their route, which my kids already told me, that she couldn't go into details with the bus driver as it was personal information. And that was pretty much where it was left off, other than she started to create like a Facebook page post to create attention. As far as if the bus driver was fired or not, or if actions were taken, I haven't seen anything. I should have looked for an update, and I can look for an update.
Yeah, see if you can find it, because I mean, regardless of what the school does, like I can't imagine that this is not a criminal matter.
Yeah.
To just drop a minor off on the side of the road, even if he was 200 feet from his house. There is a lot of risk for a little kid not being dropped off right at the driveway of their house where the parents or older sibling can meet them or whatever.
And also, you don't know if that parent is still home. Like, how many parents wait for their kid to get on the bus and then go to work? I mean, Leah and I both have boys. Your son just turned 8. Jack is going to turn 8 in a couple months. The thought of someone just dropping Jack off away from the house without my knowledge enrages me. I don't know how that's legal.
My stomach fell as she was reading it, talking about the older brother, because I was just picturing my 5th grade child and my 2nd grade 8-year-old child going through that scenario, and it made me physically ill.
Yeah.
Like, and yours doesn't have an older sibling. He is the oldest sibling. So he'd be by himself. And that was my question, too. Did the bus driver start driving and then let him off? Or was this kid left off at the bus stop?
No,
you can't get on the bus.
No, he was on the bus and was ordered off of the bus.
Just randomly on the street, just stopped and was like, "Get off my bus."
I would imagine.
Wow.
I would imagine that he didn't. I mean, not that it makes it right, but from what I'm reading, I don't think if he didn't have the mask to get on the bus driver would have been like,
"That's what I was thinking."
You can't get on the bus without your mask.
The bus. Yeah.
But how does your brother not notice that you're getting kicked off the bus?
There are holes in the story, Mounts. There definitely are holes. I mean, yeah, it's possible the brother wasn't paying attention, but there are other holes in the story that I feel like you're picking up on too. And Leah, it doesn't sound quite right. This sounds almost too monstrous of a thing to do to an innocent little kid and terrify him and traumatize him half to death. Like, I feel like I would like to know more. So yeah, anything more that you can sniff around and find out about this one, Court, for us, I'd appreciate, because I would like to know more details, because this one just doesn't sound quite right.
Yeah, I would like to know if it was the bus stop. Like, let's say the kid gets on the bus, the older sibling is talking to his friends, doesn't notice, and they tell the younger one, "You can't get on the bus." That's still bad if the parents aren't there, because at least in the state of Pennsylvania, a 2nd grader has to be either accompanied by a parent at the bus stop or by an older sibling, and the older sibling has to at least be in 4th grade, has to be at least 9 years old, or 10 years old, I'm sorry. So you can't even let a 2nd grader off a bus. Now, maybe the state of Montana is different without someone older to walk them home. So, I really want to know more about this, too. I do.
I know that, Weiser won't let all ages of elementary kids up to, I guess it's 5th grade, with a parent's not there to get them. Because my daughter, when I was working 2 jobs, I overslept once, and they called my phone to tell me that, and then they left and came back with her. But it's refreshing to know. But I mean, now they
won't let him off.
Yeah,
there was a story years ago. I remember because I laughed because the headline was just so like absurd and ridiculous that I just saw it and I laughed. But it's also like really cruel if you think about it. And the headline read, bus driver replaces blind kid's cane with a pool noodle. And you're like, why would you're reading through the story, and it turns out that the blind kid was actually hitting other kids with the cane and hurting them. So that's why they did it. So it was like, I mean, was it the best decision to make? No, but if that's all they had available, and they didn't want the kid just walking around without a cane or something to guide him, what would you do if he was hurting other children? You know what I mean? Like, so.
We talked about this on one of the first episodes of PIP I was on. You wrapped this up.
Yeah, I'll never forget it because it's burned in my mind, that headline, because of how just absurd it is and completely misleading, if you ask me.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
Anyway, so we'd like to know more on that. Let's see if we can find some more information on that for.
There's only about, from what it looks like, there's about 2 or 3 articles on this specific instance. It's scary that there are multiple instances that are coming up and they're all obviously in different states, but there's a couple of like Montana bus incidences that are coming up now too. So I'll look into it, and if there's any actual update, I will let you guys know.
Sounds good. Let's go to Kyle Rittenhouse. Abby, you have some updates on the Kyle Rittenhouse trial?
Yeah, so I have watched probably 20 hours of trial footage.
I can vouch for this. She is not exaggerating.
I got sucked in. I went down the wormhole. So I'm going to preface this by saying, I think based on the law and what the jury needs to convict on, there's a really good chance that he's not going to be found guilty. But that does not mean he is innocent.
Mm-hmm.
So, God, I don't even know where to start. There is, first of all, we already made the correction about the misinformation about the mom driving him to the protest. There have been a couple other things, too, that weren't flat out lies, but I feel like it was the media manipulating the story. As far as him driving across state lines, that is accurate, but he lives in Antioch in Illinois, and Kenosha, Wisconsin is 20 miles away. So it's literally just over the border. It was like a 35-minute drive. So it's not like he was going cross country to go to this protest.
It's like Philly and Jersey type of thing, right?
Exactly. Okay. And then also, I heard multiple people report that he didn't live there and he had no ties to the community. That's absolutely not true. His dad lives in Kenosha. His grandmother lives in Kenosha. And I think he said he had a couple other family members there. And on top of that, even though his place of employment was not in downtown Kenosha, he did work at some kind of sports complex as a lifeguard in that immediate area. So I would say he did have reason to be concerned about the rioting and looting and arson that was taking place there. That being said, he went there with an AR-15 loaded with a full magazine of Full Metal Jacket ammunition. There were 30 rounds. It was infuriating to watch him give testimony and say he picked the gun because he thought it looked cool and his friend had one and he just decided that was the one he wanted to get. And he said he was completely ignorant to what a Full Metal Jacket round was and the damage it could do. I don't believe him for a second on either of those things, but that's the testimony he gave.
Did you pick up, I'm sorry, really quick, did you pick
ahead.
up how often he used the word threatened? I felt threatened. It was a threat. I felt that was a threat.
I think he was 100. I think he was 100% coached by the defense team to make himself look as much like the victim in the situation as possible. And that's understandable. I mean, he's on trial for his life. I understand why they would do that. But it was hard to sit there and watch him cry, if we can call it crying.
Well, no, you don't call that crying. You call that a string of orgasms directly in his sinus cavity.
It was
That's what that looked like.
It looked like he was either about to orgasm or sneeze or I don't know what. It was
hold on a second. If you were with somebody who looked like that when they orgasm, would you stick around?
Nope. Oh God, no. God, no.
Oh my God, yes. I'd videotape it.
But yeah, so he's up there trying to get as much sympathy from the jury as possible. But at the same time, it's like you killed 2 people and horrendously injured another person. I don't know if you guys watched any of the footage, but they show a close-up picture of what happened to Gage Grosskreuz's arm. He's the one who was maimed and not killed. It is horrifying. It is like a chunk of his arm is just gone, and it's just bloody, pulpy mess. Which is why I say, I don't think there's anything wrong. I'm not against the Second Amendment. I know that we don't all agree on that topic, but I think you absolutely are allowed to have a firearm to protect yourself. This was so beyond self-protection. He had an assault rifle. That is a machine made to kill people. And the Full Metal Jackets, when they're giving the testimony, it can pierce body armor. It can pierce vehicles. If it goes through one person's body, it can travel straight through and hit another person. So the fact that that is what he came to armed with is negligent and reckless at the very least. Now, the part that's complicated, and as much as I want him to be guilty of something, when you watch all of the footage and hear the analysis from both sides, it's hard. It's hard. So basically what the jury has to decide at this point is, was Kyle Rittenhouse within his right to exert lethal force because he felt that his life was in imminent danger? And the interesting thing about Wisconsin is a lot of other states, the burden of proof is put on the defense to prove that he was within his rights to do it. In Wisconsin, it's on the prosecution to prove that it was not within reason for him to use lethal force, which is a lot harder to do. So this is just a difficult case all the way around. And then when you look at the footage, the prosecution argued that Joseph Rosenbaum, who was the first person who was shot by Kyle Rittenhouse, was not armed. But at the same time, all the footage that you see of him from that entire night, he was just released from a psychiatric hospital. He was aggressive. His behavior was erratic. And he was very involved in the rioting and arson part of what was going on that night.
You said even to you, he appeared to be completely unhinged.
He seemed very unhinged. So at some point, Kyle Rittenhouse had gone where he wasn't supposed to go. And I think that's important too. He had specifically been told to stay where he was to protect the businesses and protect the property. And he had no business being in the street antagonizing. He disregarded that and he went wherever the fuck he wanted to go. And he decided to go where he heard that there was commotion taking place with a fire extinguisher to try to put out any fires that might be started. That was the point at which Joseph Rosenbaum got aggressive with him and started chasing him. And Kyle Rittenhouse was, hightailing it away from him, but somebody behind him, and at this point he can't see what's going on, but somebody behind him fires a gun. I think at that point, when he has this man aggressively chasing him, not knowing what his intentions are, and here's a gunshot, I tend to think that that is reasonable cause to think that your life might be in danger. And again, I'll say he shouldn't have been there in the first place. He shouldn't have been antagonizing. He lied multiple times about being a medic, and it was to justify why he was there. I do not think his primary intention in being there was to help people and provide first aid. I think he was looking for confrontation. Okay. I don't necessarily think he was looking to kill anyone, but I think he was definitely looking for confrontation. And when you look for confrontation and you have an AR-15 strapped to your chest, it's not going to end well.
Well, yeah, and not just looking for confrontation, but expecting confrontation enough that you were armed with what he was armed with. Right. He was basically like, look, if it comes to that, I'm going to win that fight.
Right.
Yeah, and bro, I asked my daughter today, just out of curiosity, if you had an AR-15 with a full metal jacket, and I didn't say it like this, but, and 30 bullets are in the gun, and there's 30 people lined up, what can happen to those 30 people when you pull the trigger? And she said, each of them can die. She's 11. She gets it. So for Kyle Rittenhouse to pretend when he was testifying that it never even crossed his mind. Like and he was so well trained when the prosecutor was asking him, like, what did you think was going to happen? Are you aware that can kill 30 people? And he was like, I never thought about it. Like, yes, you did. You knew exactly what can happen. But I'm with you 1,000%. As far as the law goes, he's going to be found guilty or not guilty.
Yeah.
And there's a lawyer he's on HLN a lot. His name is Mark Eiglarsh, and I love him. But he says all the time that the words guilty and not guilty should be thrown out because there is no guilt or innocence in a court of law. It's proven or not proven. Did you prove your case? Did you not prove your case? And I think in this circumstance, there's no way the prosecution can prove their case. They just can't.
Go ahead, Abby.
One of the things that was the most frustrating is the speculation all along was that the prosecution was going to have a really hard time proving beyond a reasonable doubt that he was guilty. The one charge, though, that everyone thought was going to be a slam dunk was the underage possession of a firearm. And that got thrown out. And I had to look into how the hell that got thrown out because it made no sense to me. And frankly, it still doesn't make any sense to me. But there is some caveat in the law that it only applies to short-barreled rifles. And I guess that was put into law specifically to target gang violence. Yeah. So, talking about your sawed-off shotgun. It is ridiculous to me that a sawed-off shotgun is a no-no, but an AR-15 is okay. And it was up to the judge to make that call, whether this was applicable to that portion of the law. And this, in my opinion, is the most grievous example of the judge being biased in favor of the defense.
As you said from the beginning, it was obvious that he was.
Yeah, there were definitely signs. I thought, people were pointing out the ringtone on his phone being the same as the Trump rallies, and I was kind of like, yeah, whatever. As I've said before, I think people look for things to get upset about. I didn't think that was the end of the world. This weapons charge, I think, was just wrong all the way around.
What spoke to me was this thing that he did just the other day where he had Rittenhouse himself pull the names out of the hat of the 18 jurors or whatever that had heard all this evidence or whatever the number actually was. He had to pick the portion of those jurors that would actually deliberate and decide guilt or innocence on the case. And in a highly irregular move, the judge let Kyle Rittenhouse pick those names himself. Now, I think the reason he did that was because the judge believes it is possible the jury will come back and find Rittenhouse guilty of something, whether that something be manslaughter, second or third degree murder, whatever. I think the fact that he let Rittenhouse pick the names himself was this judge covering himself in case that happens to say, look, I tried everything I could to make sure this was a fair trial, even going so far as to let Kyle Rittenhouse himself pick the names of the people who would decide. I did everything I could in case it doesn't end up with a just blanket not guilty, period, he goes free. That's why I think he did it.
Well, I mean, in a situation like this, though, I mean, they're out, like, you know, trying to figure out if he's guilty of first-degree homicide, right?
Yes.
Right, so there's no, it's not like they can come back and say, well, we find him, he's not guilty of homicide, first degree, but can we do manslaughter? Like, there's no...
Well, are they all not potentially things? Are they not all potentially things he could be charged with? Like, I don't think it's first-degree murder or bust, is it?
I think in this situation, I thought that's what this was.
Yeah. They have to have charged him with all of those things beforehand.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know 100% for sure, but my understanding is, based on what I saw, the charges are 2 counts of first-degree murder for the 2 people he shot and killed, attempted murder for the man that he shot and maimed. And then there are also lesser charges for, I forget the legal term, but basically like reckless behavior, disregard for the people around. He could have injured a lot more people than he did. But as far as I am aware, those are the only charges.
Okay, well, if that's the case, then what you're saying is absolutely correct, and I won't comment further without looking deeper into that point of it. But if that's all that's on the table here, why else would the judge have done that? Is it in case he gets the attempted murder, found guilty of the attempted murder charge, or one of the lesser charges, or was there some other reason why the judge would have done a bizarre thing like that?
I don't know. People were getting upset about it, and while I acknowledge that it's highly irregular, it's not like he was picking the people in the jury himself, like he was randomly pulling them from a hat. I don't really know why it matters if he pulls them or the judge pulls them or the deputy pulls them. If you can't see who's getting pulled, I don't really know what the big issue is. I don't.
It's not a big issue as far as letting him do it will somehow make this biased in his favor. It would not. The big issue is, since it doesn't seem to make a difference one way or the other, and it's highly irregular, why do it?
Because this whole thing has been a circus show, and I think that they're just continuing to make it more of a show, because it's already gotten so much publicity to begin with, so much media attention, and the entirety of this has been a freaking circus. Yeah. They're all performing just outstanding.
Yeah.
Let's call it there. We got to take a break, and we will come back with a couple more articles to get into, and then it's the weekend.
You know why Mom and I brought you here, Brianna?
Now, Brianna!
So many years, Mom and I talked about
you act like the only option you have is to chain yourself up like a rabid animal.
About bringing you to a place where you could experience life as a kid.
They are right out past the streets.
That's not going to happen. And it's not fair.
The latest airborne mutation of the Lyssa virus, commonly known as rabies, has now wiped out nearly 40% of the world's population. There is no cure in sight. Society continues to break down. Riots, combined with unspeakable violent acts committed by people crazed by the virus, have completely overwhelmed police forces across this country.
Welcome back to our final segment of The Ever-Evolving Truth. This wonderful Friday, and the 19th. I can't believe we're almost at Thanksgiving already.
My tummy's a rumbling.
Oh my gosh, I saw a meme the other day. It's like, how the hell is it November 15th when November just started yesterday?
Yeah. I know.
This is how it kind of feels that way. Anyway, let's not waste any time here. Mounts, you have an article for us about the Olympic Committee changing transgender guidelines. What is this all about?
Yes, the article came out yesterday. I got it from CBS News, that liberal rag. But the title is The International Olympic Committee Develops New Guidelines for Transgender and Intersex Athletes. So the International Olympic Committee issued new guidances that back off previous policies affecting the transgender and intersex athletes. This framework focuses on inclusion. It is non-binding, and the IOC said it will leave it to individual sports federations to make and enforce their own eligibility requirements. Under the old framework they used, it basically came down to the level of testosterone in a person's body that would regulate if they were allowed to compete or not. Now, this new framework, it shifts towards impartial evidence-based research. So, all athletes across all sports have to meet specific criteria. Now you need evidence needed to restrict an athlete from Evidence needed to restrict an athlete from competition. You must demonstrate a consistent, unfair, disproportionate competitive advantage that poses an unpreventable risk for the specific sport regulated. So basically, it's I guess opening the door for would you say more lenient?
Well, it sounds like it's a step in the right direction. In that you had some people calling it like, if you identify as a woman, you should be able to compete in the women's division of an Olympic sport or any sports competition, because that's how you identify. Period. Which I have called then, and I will call now, ludicrous. Because there is so much room for an unfair competitive edge in a competitive environment just based on the fact that you say, this is how I identify. If they're trying to at least measure the level of competitive advantage or unfair advantage by allowing a person in who would not otherwise be allowed in based on their biology, then I guess that's a step in the right direction. And it does make a certain amount of sense that, like, well, if you're talking about a 200-pound male athlete, all things being equal on the tail of the tape, with a biologically female athlete who identifies male, so as a trans man, if there are no real big measurable differences when you look at just the tail of the tape and how they would stack up athletically, I don't have as much of a problem with that. But I think you're going to open up 1,000 new cans of worms by doing this, and there's going to be people who aren't allowed to compete because it would be an unfair competitive advantage. And wherever that line is where all your outrage and fighting is going to be. But it's at least one step in a reasonable direction from the ludicrous idea of just like, if you identify that way, you're just allowed. Period.
Isn't there a much simpler solution to this? I mean, back when women weren't able to compete and play golf, right? Gentlemen only, ladies forbidden. That's what golf stands for, right? When women were not allowed to play golf, and then eventually they fought. They didn't fight to play the men. They fought to have their own competition, and that's the way. There's women's and men's sports, right? Men aren't vying to compete against women in women's college basketball and vice versa. And now, granted, there's some women that are just so amazingly gifted that they want to try to compete with the men. I don't really have a problem with that necessarily, but let's not be, I'm not trying to be insensitive here, but there are differences between men and women. There just is. Physically, emotionally, how our bodies develop. And to try to pretend like that doesn't exist is ridiculous. Now, wouldn't it be so much easier just to have a transgender male division and a transgender female division and have them compete against each other?
That was going to be exactly what I was going to say, Jeff.
Nobody's here. Like, before the trolls, come out and be like, "Well, you're transphobic." No one's saying that trans folks should not be able to compete in the Olympics. No one here is saying that.
Not at all.
But it should be all things considered, a fair competition. You should have the same opportunity to train and not be at a physical advantage over everybody else because of the way you were born.
Yeah,
I guess the biggest the thing here, which I was reading further in the article, is in the 2020 Tokyo Games, there were two 18-year-old sprinters from Namibia, which was an African country, who were barred from competing in the 400 meters after tests revealed a high natural testosterone level. So I don't even know. It doesn't appear that they were trans. There's only been one openly trans gold medalist.
May have pointed to artificial enhancement through drugs, though.
No. I remember that case. It was natural testosterone levels. They just happened to be higher than what is normally seen in female athletes, but they were not taking any kind of supplements. And the reason this case got attention was because the metric they were using was testosterone levels. So because of trans athletes wanting to compete in that division. So it was an example of, well, here we have biological cisgendered women who just have naturally higher testosterone levels, and now they're not able to compete because that's the metric being used.
Yeah, I do think you would remove a lot of the gray area, because look, even the step in the right direction, I said I'm trying to be fair about it, because I think it should be exactly what you said, Jeff, and I've said that before myself, that you should have a trans woman and trans man division that you can compete in with other trans men and other trans women. And I wouldn't even put the trans women versus the trans men either. It's the same freaking problem on a different level. So I just think that is the solution. That's the reasonable solution. But if you're not going to get that, I'd rather have something that resembled a reasonable approach than an irrational approach.
I agree.
All right, should we move on to the last article for the day?
Yeah, let's do it.
Hit us with it, Jeff.
So I got this from NBC News. This was a special report that they did, and this is on something that happened like 40 years ago. And I just thought it would be interesting to talk about because I think there is some relevance today. Have you guys heard of the Bethesda Home for Girls?
No.
I have not.
Okay. So back in the 70s, this is a very Catholic orphanage that parents would send their troubled teen girls to. Almost like a...
Troubled or pregnant?
Both.
Okay.
But a lot of them were pregnant, yeah. So this article, this story is featured around a woman called Nancy Davis Womack, who was at this school and had her child taken away from her and given away. And where she is today, that was like 43 years ago, she is, I guess, meeting that child for the first time. They were able to find her through some DNA and things like that. But going through this story and just some of the bullet points that I took from it, this is some horrifying shit. So the Bethesda Home for Girls, they took teens' babies, and some of these women have admitted that they're still searching for these babies decades later. It was located right outside this town called Hattiesburg, Mississippi. It was run by Baptist preachers who forced girls to memorize Bible chapters and scrub carpets by hand. Staff members would beat the girls with wooden boards if they broke a rule. Womack said that the home's owners controlled every aspect of her life, from how much toilet paper she was allowed to use to what would happen to her baby once the child was born. In the 1970s and 80s, Bethesda forced pregnant girls to give up their newborns for adoption to Christian families who paid a $250 love gift to be the home. That's according to, again, NBC News investigation based on court records and interviews. This did go to court. A former judicial officer recently called the facility a baby selling factory. The home's doors were always locked, preventing the girls from leaving and raising their babies on their own. Womack cried every day, she recalled, but I would cry while we would pray so that they would think that she was really getting in touch with God. She gave birth June 1979. She was never allowed to hold her baby. More than 3 decades have passed since the federal lawsuit and a state investigation exposed the abuse here. Hundreds of girls endured at the Bethesda Home for Girls, forcing the home to close. So this place is closed. The reason I wanted to bring this up, I want to get everybody's thoughts on it. about its relevance today. You've heard me say this before. We've talked about what happens to children after they're born in relation to abortion rights and things like that. Now, maybe currently in today's society, there's not a home like this, but there are 400,000 kids in the foster system. Not every single one of those foster parents are good people. Not every single one of them cares about what happens to those kids. They're getting paid to take care of them. And then maybe perhaps providing the least amount of resources for them to survive. There are orphanages out there that these kids are stuck in that do not have the greatest living conditions. And then, of course, there still is this ridiculously crazy religious, part of the country that still believes in stuff like this. There's still gay conversion camps and things like this. So it's like, my question is, how far have we really come from this? Because when we read this, when I read it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is disgusting. This is shocking. But is it that shocking? Like, are we still experiencing stuff like this today?
Well, the foster system is an absolute horrifying mess in many, many different ways. As it relates to this story from way back in the day, I would not have a problem with an institution like that that taught a religious way of being and what was good and what was bad, blah, blah, blah. And that a troubled person of any kind could find solace there and maybe be taught a better way or a way that would help them. What I would have a problem with is that they could in any way control what happened to babies delivered by the girls that had sought help there or had been put there. The fact that they had that kind of control is an absolute miscarriage of justice and affront against humanity. And so is what goes on in so much of the foster community, which bleeds into sex trafficking, abuse, and name your atrocity. So yeah, both horrible things related in some ways. Go ahead, Abby.
I was just going to say, I think there are aspects of the story that you're talking about that definitely bleed into what we see today. Although I think we have come a long way. The things that you're talking about in that story, which I'm not familiar with that particular house. But I don't know if you guys are familiar across the pond. I forget if it was England, Ireland, or just Great Britain in general, but they had these Magdalene houses. And it was the exact same thing. Young women were sent away, usually because they were pregnant, or maybe they were just too difficult to handle. And it was a human rights violation, the way those women were treated. When you're talking about having control over how much toilet paper you use, that is problematic to say the least. And yeah, if we're talking about that fundamentalist Christian mentality, that still persists today. And I think the only reason we don't see examples like this currently in today's reality is because it's not legal anymore. If somebody was doing this today, there would absolutely be legal ramifications for it.
Well, and how much news coverage or media coverage would something like that have gotten way back in the day, decades and decades ago, versus what now you don't have to even sneeze too loud to be picked up on social media somewhere as far as somebody reporting on it. So that makes a big difference too. Whereas so much of this stuff can't happen in the same way it used to without getting out there, which is why we know so much about the abuses of the foster system, for instance.
Yeah. Well, and this is one thing about social media that I think is a good thing. Yeah. We have our wonderful Charisse from the Existential Ginger. She talks about her experiences in the Mormon church. If you go on TikTok, there are so many people who have accounts where they talk about the abuse that they suffered growing up in fundamentalist communities, families, and it's really eye-opening to see how these people live, what they teach their kids, how they discipline their kids. It gives us a lens into things that we might otherwise be completely ignorant about.
Yeah, well said. That's all we have this week. Feels
Don't
like
say it like that.
we covered a lot.
I feel like we did cover a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like we were on an emotional roller coaster today, guys.
We were up.
It was
up,
a lot.
Down, up and down. It was a lot.
Remember, fellas, take care of your balls.
I know. I was going to say
T20.
It's the weekend. Shave your balls.
Shave those balls.
Yeah,
and go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I was just going to say, Christmas coming up. Look, we got our stuff in a couple days. No supply chain issues with Manscaped. You'll get it. Great gift.
20% off is nothing to sneeze about either.
The boxers are the most comfortable thing I've ever worn in my entire life. I don't think I'll ever wear another pair of boxers in my life.
I want to tell you how
Jeff,
jealous I was.
Please buy a couple extra pairs, please.
I have a code you can use. I didn't get my boxers in my promo pack. I only got the T-shirt. I was very jealous when you were talking about how comfortable they were.
Oh,
all I had was my T-shirt and my ball deodorant, which I happily used and enjoyed.
That's
ball deodorant.
Greg, I will get you some boxers for Christmas.
The boxers were hidden underneath. I didn't find them.
Yeah, they were hidden. Did you get it underneath? Greg,
did
you look underneath the box?
I dug. I really wanted them, guys, so I dug.
Okay.
I dug.
Oh, yeah, because I was like, I had to find them.
Oh, the boxers are amazing, yeah. But yeah, the ball deodorant and the ball bronzer, totally sold on that too. Never would have bought that myself.
Bronzer.
Yep. Yeah, that's what they call it. I don't.
Yeah, no.
Deodorant for your nethers.
Yeah,
ball bronzer.
That's what they call it.
Are you doing some contouring?
I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm still figuring it out.
I need all the help I can get.
Oh my god!
Still figuring it all out. All right, we're going to call it there, guys. We will see you back here on Tuesday, where we're going to talk about our most hated celebrities. That should be a really good episode. So check us out there. Until then, you're entitled to your own opinions. You're not entitled to your own facts. Fuck you, Bethesda School for Women.